For the fastest competitors in cycling, the Tour thus far has been an exercise in patience. One stage concluding in an uphill climb, and another defined by the nuance of a team. But now the focus shifts from the man in the yellow jersey to the blinding pursuit of green as the race summons rivals who thrive on speed. For this icon of sprint dominance, racing in France is an unfinished agenda. 15 stage wins at the Tour, but the coveted prize still out of reach. His American rival is driven by persistence and the recurring sight of finishing so close on these roads. On a day designed for sprinters, Mark Cavendish and Tyler Farrar get set for the latest fast-paced face-off. Stage 3 at the Tour de France is next. Stage 3 from Redon, France, where flat meets fast, a sprinter's delight in a sleepy town not far from a calm coast. The gladiators of the sport will ratchet up the intensity. It is the 4th of July, but would there be fireworks for American Tyler Farrar? Meanwhile, the Manx missile has a 16th career stage win firmly in his crosshairs. For the 4th time in his career, Tor Hushovd is wearing yellow, but would the hammer hang on to his color? The American team, Garmin-Cervelo, celebrated America's birthday early with a Stage 2 victory in the team time trial. Their team manager, Jonathan Vaughters, experiencing the thrill of his squad capturing its first stage win at the Tour de France. Vaughters was the architect of the Dream Team, a concept clearly not lost on his riders. The day was, in a word, emotional.
We just put out a plan that got us to the line fastest, and the amount of sacrifice that all the guys had to do was to get that to happen was unbelievable. So I'm very proud, and I'm just yeah.
That, congratulations to all of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors that have supported us to be here, and thank you to all you guys for celebrating with us. So with that, cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Got our glass up. Tyler, glass up. Cheers, boys. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Tour Primetime. Happy 4th of July. I'm Liam McHugh alongside Bob Roll and Todd Gogolski. Stage 2, a huge day for U.S. cycling, a huge day for Garmin-Cervelo. Wins for Garmin, win for U.S. cycling. Why is this a win for the sport?
Well, Garmin has led, Team Garmin has always, since its inception, been on the forefront in the anti-doping movement in cycling, and finally the momentum is turning in their direction. They provide an environment where anybody on the team doesn't ever have to worry about racing anything but clean.
Tor Hushovd, Garmin-Cervelo, he is in the yellow jersey. So, what's more important here, getting the yellow jersey or keeping that yellow jersey?
Well, you gotta get it to keep it, but it is critically important for these guys to keep the jersey. It's the first time this American team, Garmin-Cervelo, has ever had the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, and those guys will die on the sword to protect it. And I can tell you, back in 1990, Bob, you were doing the same thing for Steve Bauer.
We had the jersey for many days in that Tour de France, and it's interesting what goes through your mind as an athlete when you're defending the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. In one way, it's a little bit easier tactically. You know exactly what you have to do. You go to the front and you stay there throughout the day. You wait for the breakaway to get established. You figure out who's in the break. Certain riders you don't want to let go that are around the top of the leaderboard. But anybody else in the peloton is probably free to be up the road. Then you have to keep the time gap close enough that the sprinter team can take over in the finale and catch that breakaway. You know what you need to do. It's just a question of whether or not you're able.
So the agony of the individual for the good of the team. Perhaps it's easier. It doesn't seem any easier to me. Let's take a look. Consider Stage 3. We consider this first week a big sprinters week. So, guys, who are the sprinters to watch?
Todd, who do you like?
Well, you got to keep looking at that rivalry between the American Tyler Farrar, Garmin-Cervelo, and Mark Cavendish on the HTC High Road team, another American team, although he's from the Isle of Man. And those guys are really dominant sprinters, and that rivalry continues to build. Farah's been through a really tough year with the loss of a very dear friend, Wouter Valent, in his adopted home training town of Ghent, Belgium. And that man was killed during the Giro d'Italia earlier this year, and he has sort of rebounded from that, and he's out here for some real action.
Cavendish, Farah, for your money, is just becoming the best sprint rivalry in the sport?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We don't oftentimes see anybody capable of rivaling Mark Cavendish, but finally an American is one of the few that can. Tyler Farah has been very successful in all of the races that favor the sprinters throughout the year, except the Tour de France. He hasn't gotten a stage win yet, but he's right on the cusp. He was so close 2 years ago. He's the only man in the field in 2009 that could match the accelerations of Cavendish. Let's not forget, last year in the Tour de France, he was sprinting with a broken arm until he had to drop out. So he wasn't at his best, but now he's back to his best. He's been successful in the races leading up to the Tour de France, and I think we're going to see a great rivalry unfold during the Tour de France this year between Farah and Cavendish.
Sprinting with a broken arm.
Yes, absolutely.
I tripped coming up the stairs. I almost flew back to New York. I had enough.
Fast and tough.
Imagine how that feels.
So stage 3 this whole week, it's a sprinter's delight. I don't want to imagine how it feels. Let's look at stage 3, the Michelin map. You guys are the tour guides. Bring us through this.
It's a very flat day on the profile for the guys today, but over 120 miles in total length. So really the thing they need to be watching out for is potential crosswinds out on the course. Turns out there are not many, but the big bridge crossing about halfway through, where they have the King of the Mountain sprint, that is completely exposed, and all the guys know if there's a crosswind, that's where they'll be in it before they head into the finish.
198 kilometers, just about 120 miles, 4th of July, Independence Day. See if there's going to be somebody independent of the rest of the field in the sprint in today's stage.
So 2 stages in the book. The race for the yellow jersey is clearly on, but Paul Sherwin is going to tell us everything we need to know about green, white, and even polka dots.
At the Tour de France, success can accurately be measured by the color of a cyclist's jersey.
Now the yellow jersey goes to Alberto Contador, and Andy Schleck will have to rethink his tactics now.
The most coveted garment in cycling, the famed yellow jersey, is a flashing light to signal who's in the lead. In recent years, it's been carried into Paris by Contador, but vehemently pursued by his top challengers as well. And once again, yellow will likely be symbolic of the premier rivalry in cycling. But not every competitor has legitimate title aspirations, and for those who might not chase yellow, other prominent distinctions exist.
The green jersey, it's back on the shoulders of Alessandro Pataki.
Rather than focus on yellow, the sprinters in the field hunt a jersey made of green. A running tally of points to settle the issue of bragging rights as the fastest competitor on the road. It is an art practiced masterfully by Mark Cavendish, but never before perfected in France. 15 stage wins at the Tour, but still hoping to harness a green jersey victory.
I've got to admire Anthony Charteau. He's not one of the world's greatest climbers, yet because he's wearing the polka dot jersey of leader, he is attacked on the most difficult days and he's scoring points.
Where climbing is concerned, the measure of excellence is easy to spot. The Tour's King of the Mountains will always display the repeat pattern. Formidable climbing and an ascent to the polka dot jersey.
So there he is, the white jersey. He equals the record set by Jan Ullrich. He'll be looking for yellow next year for sure.
For cyclists aged 25 and under, the white jersey is a warning shot for an impending rise to prominence. The perfect blueprint for the top young rider. Capture white and later turn it into Tour de France gold. From yellow to green to polka dot to white, they are the 4 most prized possessions at the Tour. Each one carrying its own distinct honour for those with the honour of wearing it into Paris.
Week 1 is all about the green, guys, but we have a new point system here. Let's break it down.
Well, halfway through each stage in this year's Tour de France, there'll be a lot of points for the green jersey on offer. Flat stages, 45 points. That's for the winner, and it descends down from there. Medium mountain stage, 30 points. This does not have anything to do with the yellow jersey. That's all about time. But throughout the Tour de France, to give the most consistent rider, and generally the sprinters dominate the green jersey competition, they have their own competition, and that's for the green jersey.
So with those points in mind, quick note, Philippe Gilbert, the Belgian national champion, he currently holds the green jersey. We'll have more on Tour Prime next.
Tour is the biggest race in the world. There's always a pressure to win.
I hate losing. I said it, I achieved that, and I'll never look back on what I've done.
You know, as rivals, you can still respect each other.
A sprint is not for the weak-hearted.
I hope I can put it together this year and finally get that victory.
If you aim for a target, you will reach that target. I get one shot at this. This is it. I want to leave a legacy on the sport.
Cavendish and Farah, the fast man, will tail the tape here. Pretty similar age tours until we get to stage wins at the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish holding a 15-0 advantage there. So 15 tour stage wins for Mark Cavendish. He said he could win 5 to 7 more at this tour. Is that the attitude you want out of a sprinter?
Absolutely, that's the attitude you want from a sprinter. You want a guy who believes that he can slay everybody when it comes to the dash to the line, and he's got the team to back him up. That's Mark Cavendish's attitude.
I think a lot of people at home hear the word sprint. They hear sprinting. It, in essence, sounds like an individual endeavor. But in cycling, very, very much a team concept. A lot of strategy. Take us inside the strategy of HTC.
Well, I did bring a board to illustrate it. If you could help me, Liam,
convenient.
holding this.
Bob Key's board. Bob Key's board. Would you like me to hold this?
That would be great.
Yeah, dynamite.
In a perfect world, and you have a sprinter as accomplished as Mark Cavendish is, you can build basically a whole team in the Tour de France for one objective: to win stages. HTC, top of the pyramid, Mark Cavendish. Just in front of him, Matt Goss and Mark Renshaw coming into the final. You need riders that can do the long lead out from about 10 kilometers to go to, say, the last kilometer. Lars Bak, Martin Velitz, Bernie Eisel, that's their job. Danny Pate, a great time trialist, along with TJ Van Garderen. Their overall contender, Tony Martin, only if he's needed will he come to the front. They have a dream team, and it's built around Mark Cavendish being able to get stage wins. Doesn't always play out perfectly, but when they get it right, they're almost impossible to beat.
Are you done?
Last year, let me give you an example of that. Stage 5, Cavendish's first win, and we had a situation where Cavendish was the last man in the closing few hundred meters with a lead-out guy. Cavendish on the wheel of his teammate. That's Mark Cavendish. Alessandro Patacchi in the green jersey. You can see no Lamprey teammates. This is a critical moment in the stage. Cavendish is following the wheel of Mark Renshaw through all of this chaotic traffic. Let's not forget they're going about 65 kilometers an hour here. Renshaw, this is a man strong enough perhaps to win stages on his own, but Cavendish, once he takes over and hits the afterburners, head down, straight to the finish line. It's only about 100 meters now. You can see Patacchi struggling to match that acceleration. When you have to go and do all that work by yourself, it's absolutely impossible to follow the acceleration of a man that's as quick as Mark Cavendish, and that's how it's done in the Tour de France.
So essentially, you're our Mark Cavendish. You get all the glory. I do the grunt work. Yeah, that's
You don't
what
mind.
it seems. No, not at all. I've never been prouder or more thrilled that I bothered to get the master's degree in journalism. Stage 3, Tour de France. More on this coming up on Tour Prime.
It's absolutely the best day so far. I would like to think it's the best day we've had in Europe since summer began. 79 degrees and light winds blowing. It is a fabulous day for the bike race. And don't forget, all of these stunning images are also available to you in HD. Now let's have a look at our rider update. It's not going to tell us too much today, Paul, is it? Because there's nobody giving up the Tour de France yet. All of the teams are intact. And by day 3, that isn't always the case. So we're having a very good start for all of the teams in what everybody feels is going to be a great Tour de France. These are the boys we've got on the pulse.
Yeah, we'll be checking out their heart rate and their wattage outputs later out in the course to give us an indication of just how difficult this is. Thomas Veikas of Lithuania, Christian Knies, and it's not a surprise to go to the front end of the main field and have a look at Garmin Cervelo controlling.
Yes, that's the job of the team with the race leader on it, and yesterday was one of, I think, probably the proudest moment of team manager Jonathan Vaught's career as a sporting director, when he saw his team win the team time trial and claim the maillot jaune for Thor Hushovd. Of course, the ex-teammate of Jonathan Vaught is in his professional day as well.
In the yellow sunglasses, there is Alberto Contador. He must be asking himself questions every time he goes to bed at night. He would not expect to be 1 minute and 42 seconds behind after just 2 days of racing, but it's not impossible that this man can fight back, and he is, after all, Phil, a true champion. And I have to think that he is going to attack like a crazy man once we get down to the Pyrenees, and he's supported by the French spectators.
Well, moments ago, these leaders hit their highest point of ahead of the peloton, and they've just done it again. They've just added a second. 7 minutes and 8 seconds. But they still have a little matter of 125 kilometres to go. So that's about 77 miles still to race. So the boys aren't going to worry too much just yet. But we do have that situation at the midway sprint, Paul, which comes at 104 kilometres in at Saint-Hilaire, and they'll probably get there before anybody else, that's for sure. Still riding along, gentle paces, 23 miles an hour. Our tracker there just pointing out the location of Hushovd in the yellow jersey. We'll join the leaders up front here. Between them, Paul, these 5 guys have ridden a total of 20 Tours de France.
And what's interesting is 3 of the riders in this break are actually former pursuit riders, so they're used to getting into a breakaway like this and sharing the pacemaking at the front. The man directly on the front is Jose Ivan Gutierrez, and he's formerly not only the road champion of Spain, but also been the time trial champion as well.
Time lost so far is on the right side of our picture, and Gutierrez is highest placed. He's only lost 1 minute and 9 seconds. And right now, because of their time gaps, these 5 riders are literally the top 5 riders virtual on the Tour de France. First timer, Ruben Perez, the youngster on Euskadi, and that's him sat at the back there. And the first timers making an impression in these early days of the Tour de France. They want to be seen on telly back home, I'm sure.
They certainly do. These riders got clear. All the aggression started in the first kilometre, and it took about 2.5 kilometres for this breakaway to get established. I think the teams of the sprinters, Phil, are fairly confident to allow a break of 3, 4, 5 men to go off the front end of the main field, because in a stage as long as this, 198 kilometres, 125 miles of racing, they know that it's a tall order for a small breakaway to succeed. If it's a breakaway of 10 or 12 riders, they will chase it down immediately.
Well, we're just under 30 kilometres, about 19 miles to that green points jersey sprint, which is the halfway point of the day today. There's only 1 sprint every day on the road races under new rules. They carry big points, and these 5 boys are going to take away the best points of the day. So that'll take a little pressure off Mark Cavendish and Tyler Farrar, and they'll concentrate on the finish. We'll see you in a moment.
The 2011 Tour de France on Versus is brought to you by Izod. Visit your local Macy's to find the latest in Izod color and performance. And by Scott Sports and the new Foil Aero Road Bike.
Welcome back to the Tour de France. There are 10 Americans in the Tour de France this year, which equals the best ever entry by the Americans. Here how they stand in our USA Cycling American standings. George Hincapie's 13th, TJ Van Garderen, a first-timer, is 16th. Time gaps look good on the right for all of these riders, Horner, Leipheimer and Tommy D. Christian van der Velde, involved in the delay on the Thursday crash, has lost 1 minute 49. Brent Buchwalter dropped his toothpaste down the toilet, by the way, today. He was telling us he's at 2:31. And Tyler Farrar, who we hope will win today, he's last, but he's a sprinter. He's not worried where he is overall, is he, Paul?
No, the sprinters don't worry too much at all about trying to conserve time losses. They try and make sure that they conserve as much energy as possible and come out and prove why. We like to call them very often the warriors of the route, because those are the men who take all kinds of risks in the final few kilometres.
Yes, well, we often talk about the French trying to win on Bastille Day. That's their big celebration day, July the 14th. And it's July the 4th today, American Independence Day, and a chance perhaps for an American to win. And tomorrow it's another national holiday, but on the Isle of Man, the home of Mark Cavendish, where the local government celebrates their Tindwall Day, which is their governmental title. But he won't be winning tomorrow, will he, Paul?
I doubt it, because tomorrow's going to be a very difficult finish. It's to the top of a small climb called the Mur de Bretagne, which basically basically translated means the wall of Brittany.
And it is a wall too, and the 3 kilometre rule does not count tomorrow, is that right, or does count?
That is correct. It does not apply tomorrow. It's regarded as a hilltop finish tomorrow, and I'm not really quite sure, if you go back and look at the climb up to the top of the Mont des Alouettes, what the difference is between the two climbs, because I have to say that I thought the first stage finish was pretty tough.
That's right, because the 3 kilometre rule, which was applied the other day, means that if you fall or have a flat tyre in the last 3 kilometres of the day, you get the time of the riders you're with when the problem occurred, and usually you're with the leaders. But it's not going to happen if you fall in the last 3 kilometres tomorrow. I'm afraid you've got to get up and keep chasing. Thank you very much. This is Gutierrez here, a well-known image in the Tour de France. Jose Ivan riding on the Movistar team. 8 Tours de France he's ridden. This is the breakaway. This has gone away, has now got a lead of almost 8 minutes, and they are fast approaching the sprint of the day, which is about 25 kilometres ahead, some 15 miles in front.
Well, what we've done over the last 10 minutes is that we've logged how much work has been done by the 5 leaders at the front end of the main fields. Ruben Perez has done the most with 24%, and Maxime Bouet the least at 14%. But that's if you look at it, they're pretty much all sharing the pace-making equally.
I'm laughing because the first timer on the tour has done the most work there, Ruben Perez. The wise old owls in the breakaway are not worried. They're letting him do all the work. Why not?
Well, it's you get excited if you get into a breakaway in the first part of the Tour de France, especially if it's your first participation. What you tend to forget is this is a 3-week bike race, and you've got to make sure that you conserve as much energy as possible and think a long way down the road.
And still conserving his energy down in that peloton, of course, is the American Tyler Farrell. Why we've got a chase on. Let's find out what he had to say this morning when he was talking with Craig Hummer.
Tyler, the team's achieved one of their biggest goals, not only winning a stage yesterday, but putting a man in yellow. Are you putting any extra pressure on yourself today, because this is one for the pure sprinters and a chance for you?
I mean, I think the pressure is, to a certain extent, off a little bit. Our big goal coming here was to win a stage, and we've done that. Now we can relax that little bit and enjoy it, and hopefully win again.
How much confidence did winning, not winning, but of course winning the bunch sprint in the first stage and that intermediate sprint give you?
It never hurts. I mean, there's a big difference between an intermediate sprint and the victory, but it never hurts.
All right, well, good luck today.
Thanks.
Yes, and I think his confidence will be sky high now, as is all the team of Cervelo. And here they are on the front and doing what they have to do as the teammates of the race leader. That's set the pace.
It's going to be a very complicated day for Garmin Cervelo today, Phil, because after all, yes, they do have Thor Hushovd in the leader's yellow jersey, and they also have a very fast sprinter in the shape of Tyler Farrar. I wonder what is going to happen. What is team tactics going to dictate when we come down to the final sprint? Will Thor Hushovd try and lead out Tyler Farrar, or will they both sprint separately?
The winners after yesterday, all of them. That's why they're smiling. Dave Zabriskie on the left there, full of smiles as he looks at his teammates. These are the riders of Andre Greipel. We haven't said a lot about Andre Greipel today, but he could be the man to spoil the party at the finish. He is the big sprinter. He's already won one event this week. He was the first rider to fall off on the first day. That's one of his teammates, Van Aert. He's a newcomer to the Tour, just signalling the team car.
Another sprinter's name to throw into the mix is another first-time rider in the Tour de France as well on Team Sky, and that, of course, is Ben Swift, and he'll be looking to show that he's one of the fastest developing sprinters in the world.
Yes, Swift by name, and I'll tell you, Swift by nature. Anyway, don't forget now, make sure you're playing the IZOD Race for the Podium sweepstakes, and you do this by logging on to nbcsports.com/the podium every day during the Tour for your chance to win a trip for 2 to the 2012 Tour de France and a Cervelo S5 bicycle. You can also win a clean bottle and a Giro helmet. There's the code word for you, and it's sprint. Well, we're going to show you plenty of beautiful chateaux, big lakes and churches today as we wander around France. The riders now heading towards their first finish of the Tour today in Brittany as we go towards Redon. We'll see you in a moment.
Welcome back to Tour Prime on Versus. Before we get you back out to Stage 3 action, let's take you back to yesterday, Stage 2, and take you inside the car of BMC, Cadel Evans' team.
Good job, man. Good job. Everybody is doing line, huh? Think about the first curve, the first narrow curve, sharp curve to the left there, huh? Good job, guys. That was a really good start. 2 seconds better than Radio Shack on this curve. 2 seconds better than Radio Shack. Come on. Brent, you enter behind Cadell. You enter behind Cadell like usual. And Santa Romita is opening the gap. That's the best time. 2 seconds more than Garmin. No problem. You're in the time. Come on, guys. Keep it. Great job. That's a really good start. You're on the time. You're on the time. Come on, Cadell. Good job. Still with 7. Still with 7. 7 to go. Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. At it. That's really good. That's really good. It's 6 seconds more than Garmin. Second time. That's really good. That's really good. Come on, guys. Keep it. 2Ks to go. 2Ks to go. Phenomenal, guys. Come on. Keep it. Keep it. Bending to the left after the city and then sharp right. Don't forget. Easy, 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 easy. Good job. Phenomenal, guys. Phenomenal. You are making a great TT. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Allez, until the end. 200 to go. 200. That's the last sprint. That's the last sprint. Come on, guys. Come on, come on, come on, come on. You did a really, really, really professional job. Congratulations to all of you. Antonio, good job. Hey, Antonio.
Speaking of phenomenal, let's get you back to race action with Phil Liggett and Paul Schroeder.
As the crowd cheers on the racers here through, I think we're in the town of Saint-Pazan just at the moment, 108 kilometers down to the finish line for the riders to go. And we will go through the sprint at Saint-Hilaire-de-Chaléon, which is at 94 kilometers from the finish. So you can see that we're closing in where they get maximum points for the green jersey. But with 5 riders clear, we will still see a big sprint from the peloton. Now, Mark Cavendish on day 1 found it very difficult to raise his spirit to win a midway sprint point. His enthusiasm wasn't there like it would be to win the stage. So we'll see if he's got his mind in a better frame.
And even more dampened, Phil, by the fact that there was a breakaway off the front, and sprinters like to sprint for first place, not for 4th, 5th or 6th.
Yes.
And I think his mind just really wasn't quite in it. But today his mind will be in it. I think they're a little bit stinging from the fact that they were so close to winning the team time trial yesterday, losing out by a mere 5 seconds and riding that time trial with a man short because Bernie Eisel crashing after just 500 meters.
Yes, that was very, very sad. And Bernie Eisel said afterwards it was the most embarrassing day of his professional cycling career. And we all felt for him too. Everybody makes mistakes. So the peloton just lifting up the tempo, and so we're just low flat tire this one. This is for the team leader of AG2R, which is Nicolas Roche.
Well,
it's a good tire to puncture if you've got to have one, I guess.
Certainly better off now than in the last 15 to 20 kilometers. No panic at all here because the main field is not riding flat out. They're averaging around about 27.5 miles an hour, 45 kilometers an hour as Nicolas Roche gets up and running. I'm glad to see him riding in the Tour de France here, Phil, because in the Critérium de Dauphiné he had a very nasty crash and he was on the ground for some time, and I thought that was going to have to be paid over the next couple of months in a bit of recovery time, but he seems to be good.
Well, his dad is Stephen Roche, who won the Tour de France in 1987, and his uncle is Lawrence Roche, who rode the Tour de France in 1991. So now Nicolas Roche is the next man on the block, and this is now his 3rd Tour de France, and he's got real quality talent too. 15th is his best finish, and that was last year. So he is the leader of this French team.
And of course 7th overall in the Vuelta a España last year.
So we'll see what I know the team are expecting big things of him. They claim him as French, I think. He was born to French parentage. His mum's French, and he speaks the language fluently. He had to make the decision a couple of years ago whether he was to continue as a French license holder or an Irish license holder. He opted in the end to represent Ireland. So, and I believe the rules state now you can't change back. So he's down as Irish. These are the hard-working team cars here. You've got to be careful. The team cars must drive on the right to allow traffic to move on the left. But the riders, you've got to remember, are in between quite often. And, well, I've told you the story about Stephen Roche. I remember a horrible scene where Stephen was 1 inch away from being run down by a team car when he fell off. He literally had his hand on the wheel when the car stopped. So we don't want to see any of that. Time to pick up the bags, take on your favourite food for the day, which isn't very exciting, especially when your mouth is dry and horrible, but nonetheless you must take on the food and you must keep eating. This is the feeding station here, and then those guys will turn out to be the chaps doing the massages tonight for the riders once they get themselves to the hotels. They're the hardest working men in the business, the team soigneurs, or masseurs, or masseuses indeed. They make the food after they finish massaging the riders. They put it in the bags, they drive to the feeding point, and then they come and hand it up to them. So still a big lead on the cards at the moment, and a pleasant day so far for the man who's reflecting the sun, Thor Hushovd. We'll take a break and we'll see you back in a moment. Now, let me explain a little bit more in detail with the help of some of the team managers all about this green jersey competition, because it was invented in 1953, introduced then, to give the sprinters a reason for riding around France. The men that can't climb mountains, but they have a target, and it's the green jersey. It's the second most important jersey in the competition. But this year they've changed the rules a little bit, which will again continue to favour the sprinters and take any points away from possible climbers. And so what it means is that at the midway point, and we're approaching it very shortly, there will be a sprint as if it were at the finishing line.
Point system on the Tour de France of the green jersey competition in 2011, it's going to be very interesting. You have 2 races in one.
I think they want to have more focus on all the intermediate sprints. So before there were 3 guys with good points, so that the sprint teams, they kind of just let a group go, and then we didn't have the sprint behind. But now it's the 15 first guys get points, so you have to sprint during the stage and also in the finish.
Thank you very much, he said. 6 points in the bag, and that will now give him the lead in this classification.
You know, you have to still sprint now in the middle of the stage, but there's only one, so maybe that's okay. It could go either incredibly good in my way or incredibly bad. There won't be a mediocre where I've got to fight for it.
They're going to require a lot of thought when the time comes, and you know, some pretty serious adjustments to the tactics as far as a green jersey bid goes. There's a lot of points up for grab in the halfway point every day. It's going to really change the dynamic of the race a lot.
Now if there are 4 guys away, there's still 10 points to earn. So that means you let them go, you control it 10 minutes, but you have to be aware for that intermediate sprint. So you do a lead out, you bring him to the line, you sprint, and then you have to get together again. Those poor guys, they already chased for 2 hours. You have to get them together again, go to the front again, find your rhythm. Don't come too close, because then, you know, if you prepare the sprint and they're only on 3 minutes, you might catch them, which you don't want to do at that stage. So it's more complicated. It's definitely going to be more work.
So let's have a look at the standings in the green jersey competition. Now, after his great ride on day 1, he won the day. Philippe Gilbert still has the green jersey, 10 points ahead of Cadel Evans, and Thor Hushovd third. There were no points for the green jersey in the team time trial. Today, I think we can rest assured that somebody else will take it. Likely Thor Hushovd in third place. We'll find out. We are 3 kilometres, just under 2 miles from that sprint. I'm not sure how much these boys will be interested in it, because none are really long-term prospects, but this early in the Tour, I'm sure they'll have a go at getting points. You never know how this opening week will pan out. Now we're looking here for the first 5, and then that means, Paul, we've got 10 places in the peloton to sweep all the points. That means we're going to see quite a battle for that finishing line by the peloton. That's also responsible for the slight increase in the speed now, as they start to think of winning the points, or the best of the rest points. And we expect to see Cavendish taking part, and we expect to see Greipel, Alessandro Petacchi. I once remember Petacco abandoning the race once when he was wearing the leader's green jersey in the points competition. Now, just seeing here, these are the 5 leaders as they continue to ride quite solidly at the front, but the gap is coming down. Maxime Bouet is having a chat here with his team. It's his 3rd Tour de France for AG2R.
Well, just coming back to that point, Phil, the new rules on the sprint point halfway through the course. There are 20 points available for the first rider to cross the line, and it goes down to a single point for the rider who crosses the line in 15. So with the main field looking to sprint for 6th place, there are 10 points available at the front end of the sprint for the main field, and I would like to see Tyler Farrar kicking a fine pair of heels again. He was the one who dominated the first time over.
Yeah.
Cavendish just seemed to give up.
He did. He started to run for the line, and then they just swept by him, and he just swept himself out of it. And he said on his Twitter side he found it difficult to motivate himself for a sprint which was only for 4th place and not at the end of the race. Well, if he wants to win the green jersey this year, he's going to have to sort of change that attitude and try and focus himself. But, you know, this man from the Isle of Man loves winning the daily stages. He's not really interested in riding around in the green jersey, which he has worn previously.
Well, I think he just enjoys the explosion of actually winning the race at the end, especially after being put into position by his team. And he's got a very strong lead-out squad this year in the Tour de France. I think bringing on board Matty Goss could really be the exchange sprinter for Team HTC Hiro, because he's got a fine turn of speed himself. But you can now, Phil, start to notice the teams of the sprinters are moving themselves up to the front end. I just noticed Alessandro Pataki's Lampre team. Those are the riders in their blue and pink jerseys over on the left-hand side. They're getting themselves an organisation at the front end of the pack, and so too 1 or 2 riders from HTC are in prominence.
Yes, the peloton sweeping round. All 198 that started at this Tour de France on Saturday are still here, and Geraint Thomas, the Welshman, and on Team Sky, rides in the white jersey as the leading young rider, a jersey he's worn before in the Tour de France. And as we go back to the pictures, because this is the green flame now, we haven't seen this until this year, which indicates a kilometre to go for the big sprint, the big interim sprint of the Tour de France, to be won every day in the road race stages. 5 riders up front aren't going to get caught now. They're approaching the sprint with a lead of 6 minutes and 12 seconds. I think they'll battle it out. Why not? And then we'll see how the sprinters get on when they fight out for those 10 remaining points back in the peloton.
Well, the important thing is, Phil, after all, that there's a fair amount of money at stake for that sprinter, 1,500 euros, which is about $2,200. But more importantly for these guys, I think they're more concerned with the money rather than the points, because none of these riders are riders who will be talking about for the points classification in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
The way they're riding, they are going to have a go here, because there's a little bit of tactical employment, I think, just at the moment. Not so anxious to share all the pacemaking just now.
Well, sitting in 3rd position, that's an ideal position for Nicky Terpstra, a man who's got a bit of a track background. He should know how to place himself positionally in the wheel. It looks like Gutierrez is trying to lead it out.
Well, watch out, because this is now an attack by Delage, who was on the man on the back, and he's flown away. Terpstra was last year's champion of Holland, and he's in 3rd place, but they're not going to catch him. The Frenchman has pulled a good move here. He better keep going now as he gets up to the line. He gets the points for the sprint, to the applause of the crowd. 2nd will be Gutierrez, 3rd is Terpstra, 4th will be Perez, and that leaves only the 5th place man to finish, Bouet.
Well, talking about track knowledge there, in fact, Michael Delage was also a very good track rider. He was the junior national pursuit champion of France and finished 2nd in the World Championships, and he knew exactly which moment there to make the move.
Yeah, well, 1,500 euros, that's the currency in France, so he can make use of that. It would have been no good going to England, would it?
No, certainly not. They decided to opt out of the Eurozone a long time ago, and it may well appear to be quite possibly the right decision.
Well, 1,500 euros in the bank then for the winner of that sprint, Michael Delage, Française des Jeux. Wildcard team in the Tour. They aren't automatically qualified to ride the Tour de France, but they're French, and the organisers admit they want to encourage more success in French cycling.
Michael Delage, in fact, he turned professional in 2005 for Française des Jeux, and he was with that team right up until 2008 when he decided to move across to Belgium to try and learn his trade, and he raced for 2 years with Silence Lotto and then Omega Pharma Lotto before coming home back to FDJ.
Oh, the sun, as you can see now, is getting pretty high in the sky here. And it is a glorious day. There's rumours the clouds may come in overnight, and it may not be quite such a great day in Brittany tomorrow, but I hope they're wrong, because it makes for such a happy day for the spectators as well, and there are plenty of those around. As we know, as we drive to our hotels at night, the roads are absolutely packed with spectators coming here just for the Tour de France.
Well, these riders have gone through the sprint point. The main field now, Phil, I would expect will be starting to jockey for position And I wonder if Philippe Gilbert will lead out Andre Greipel, or whether he will try and get himself some points himself, because he leads that competition. But look at the back end of the main field.
Oh, dear me. The engine driver just stoked up the steam by the look of it, because these boys now are really feeling the sharp end of the whip of the peloton as they're pulled into a line, and Alessandro Petacchi is up for this, because we have the riders from Lamprey now looking for Alijet, and now Alijet said he didn't like the finish on day 1. He said, but watch out for him on day 3, and this is day 3. He'll be the last man in pink in that long line.
Well, the man in the red, white and blue jersey there is the Slovenian national champion, Gregor Bole, and he will be the last man, I think, to lead out Alessandro Petacchi.
Bole himself is a very, very good sprinter in his second Tour de France now, but he's not quite the man or with the speed of Petacchi, so he will try to lead out Alessandro if he can.
You can see they're lining up there. Quick Step. There's Gert Stegemans is the third rider in the blue and white jerseys of Quick Step, looking over his shoulder, and he will be looking for the shape of Tom Bonen.
Yes, that's the centre boys in white and blue, as they all just trying to hide their sprinters until they get them towards the finish. We've got Sylvain Chavanel trying to creep up on the outside. He's looking for where Tom Bonen is. Somebody's made a move over to the left, because I saw Chavanel grit his teeth there.
Just spot the green jersey popping in and out there. That, of course, is that's Philippe Gilbert. Fourth wheel there of the riders of Lamprey is Alessandro Petacchi. And let's not forget, he's riding for Cannondale, and last year he was the winner of the green jersey points classification as well, right on the Champs-Élysées.
Interesting to note that Quick Step, and that means Tom Bonen is taking an interest here now, as but they're launching the sprint, but Quick Step are a bit sharper here. They're trying to bring Tom Bonen, and watch out, because HTC on the right, the team of Mark Cavendish, are beginning to take an interest, as Bernie Eisel, the man that fell off yesterday, is pulling them through at the kilometre to go.
Gregor Bole on the front, red, white and blue, leading out Alessandro Petacchi. Petacchi's the rider in the lime green bicycle, but there's a move on the left-hand side now coming from Omega Pharma Lotte. That'll be Philippe Gilbert, but behind Philippe Gilbert, Andre Greipel.
Greipel is also going to help Philippe Gilbert here, because Gilbert is right up there, but the lead out is perfect at the moment, as there's a rush down the outside from the helicopter. Petacchi has got the pink jersey on second place here, and the final lead out coming from Sylvain Chavanel for Petacchi. Now, what's Petacchi going to do? They've got this sharp right-hand turn here. Gilbert is in second wheel. Petacchi looks him in the eye. Well, this is a cheeky move, but the yellow jersey of Hushoff here, little bit of a lean on there from the HTC rider. Hushoff looks at him, doesn't move. Hushoff is going to go for this one. He wants to convert yellow to green if he can, but Mark Cavendish is also through the middle, and as they come up to the line, he's got the enthusiasm now. That missile just hit home.
Well, I tell you what, I didn't notice Tyler Farrer in there at all, but certainly a perfect lead out for Mark Cavendish. He gets across the line. He gets himself 10 points there. He, Phil, is looking to get himself back into this game, and he's got the psychological preparation behind him now to sprint well.
Yes, well, today he decided he rather likes sprinting for what is in fact sixth place, because that was a very, very good sprint. There was that little clash of shoulders there, because Hushoff tried to dive onto the back wheel of Gilbert, and Mark didn't move at all, so they just leaned on each other. And now, once they both opened up the sprint, well, Philippe Gilbert is a good sprinter, but hey, nobody's in the clash of Cavendish.
Well, they certainly are. Cavendish just proving a little point early on in the stage here this afternoon, and as you say, Phil, rather strange there to see the yellow jersey mixing it up in these sprints, and of course Philippe Gilbert sprinting as well. I have a feeling a long way down the road Philippe Gilbert will be looking to try and get himself a good crack at this green jersey.
All right, they say rubbing is racing. I don't know about headbutting. This is sprinting. It's supposed to be aggressive. Was this too aggressive? Did this cross the line?
Well, if we take another look at it, we can see just how aggressive Mark Cavendish was. Tor Hushoff following the wheel of Philippe Gilbert in the green jersey, Tor Hushoff in the yellow jersey. Pretty much on the wheel of Gilbert. Cavendish waiting for his sprint to begin, hesitating for a moment, feels the presence of Hushoff, leans across. He's marking his territory there, saying, Tor, get off of that wheel. I need that for this sprint coming up. And that I think the officials might have to take a little bit closer look at that. That's maybe a little bit too aggressive for Cavendish to be headbutting intermediate sprint, the yellow jersey, Tor Hushoff.
Cavendish, we saw it was clear. He headbutted.
Yeah,
Tour, he got in his way.
Bob, I agree with you about the headbutt, but can we look at that one more time? Because I got to say that I see it slightly differently. If you look at the green jersey of Philippe Gilbert, notice that he actually moves over to the left and gets in front of Cavendish, and Hushov kind of comes over and tries to impede on Cavendish. So Cavendish is obviously marking his territory. The thing that gets him potentially a little bit of extra scrutiny is the headbutt. But he certainly was not the initial aggressor in that movement.
Yeah, I would say anytime you throw the words headbutt in there, you come under a little bit of scrutiny. But it's certainly not a stretch to say that both these guys might be coming under some scrutiny.
I don't think that Tor Hushov honestly did anything too egregious in that circumstance. It was mostly Mark Cavendish being a little bit too aggressive there in the sprint, in my opinion. We'll see.
And Cavendish is a much smaller guy, and so when you got a big guy, Tor Hushov, moving over on you, he probably is feeling that he literally cannot hold his position against the big hammer from Norway without getting his head in the mix.
But you know what? This happens throughout sports where reputation calls are made. Do you think Cavendish has a reputation that's certainly not going to help him?
No. I think the officials honestly take each sprint on a case-by-case basis, and they try to apply a fair application of the rules. Every circumstance are a lot different. When the tour organizers put this new format into the race, this is exactly what they were hoping for. It's thrilling in the middle of the race. We don't oftentimes have a sprint like that.
So they'll take it individual by individual, case by case, headbutt by headbutt, so to speak. More to come on Tour Prime right after this. Welcome back to Tour Prime. It is time for Ask Bobke, presented by Head Sweats. Today's question coming from John Loomis. How far do they go on training rides throughout the off-season?
The off-season training is absolutely critical in cycling. The rides vary anywhere from hour and a half to 2 hours to up to 6, 7, or 8 hours, depending on the block of training that the riders are doing. Generally, the riders start maybe a little bit after Thanksgiving. They train all the way through the early season. The preparation from the Tour de France takes all year to get ready, and that goes on year in and year out. When you see a lone cyclist in the middle of December and it's freezing cold, they're probably a professional.
You ask, he puts a hat on, and he answers. All you have to do is go on to Versus Cycling on Facebook. Right now, let's rejoin Phil and Paul with the call.
These are the leaders. They won't have seen much of the river today. They've been doing all of the work since the second kilometre. The lead is now coming down to just over 5 minutes. The man at the back is the Euskadi rider. That is Ruben Perez. 4 tours for him. I think I said earlier he'd only had 1 tour. Well, I was wrong. I just checked. He had 4. And Gutierrez is on his 8th tour. Maxime Bouet is 3rd. Nicky Terpstra his 4th. And Mikel Delage his 4th as well. So they're a well-experienced bunch here. And none of them have won a stage of the Tour de France yet.
Yeah, Gutierrez has been pretty close. He's much more renowned. That's Gutierrez on the front in the dark blue jersey with the M Movistar on it. He's been the world under-23 time trial champion. He's been national champion or national road champion of Spain almost every year since 2000, when he turned professional, either on the road race or in the time trial.
Yep. This year, though, he never got the title, and he never won either title, actually. But nonetheless, the peloton looking a lot more urgent down there now from our helicopter. A little bit of dodging of the traffic furniture down there, and the line is beginning to stretch. That's a sure sign now, because the gap will start to tumble as they start to try and reel in these boys, these long straight roads, which we often see in this part of France now. Never conducive to the breakaway, because quite often, even if they're 4 minutes ahead, the riders will know where they are because of the proximity of the helicopters.
Well, we're now looking at about 25 miles or 40 kilometres of riding from Saint-Hilaire, where the main field just went through that sprint point, until they get to the massive climb today, Phil, of the Côte de Le Pont de Saint-Nazaire.
I'm just looking at this. I'm sorry about the picture breakup, but I was working on the fact this looked like Anthony Charteau making a move there, last year's King of the Mountains, which might be interesting. Is it an early move to try and grab the only point available today in the King of the Mountains?
Yes, well, the organisation of the Tour de France have completely changed around the points, not only in the green jersey points competition, but also in the King of the Mountains classification, giving only a single point for a rider who goes over the top of the small 4th category climbs. And I think it's not a bad idea, because it's axing then the competition much more to the high peaks, and a true king of the mountains. Not that I want to take anything away from the title won by Anthony Charteau last year, but most of his points, Phil, were garnered on the smaller climbs, not the mountains.
Well, yes, indeed. But he did have to fight on some of the high mountains, and I took my hat off to him there because he really worked very, very hard to keep that title in the bag when we all thought it would be lost in the mountains of the Pyrenees. But it wasn't. He kept it. So at the moment, overall, Philippe Gilbert keeps his overall lead in the green jersey. He's got amassed 51 points, and Cadel Evans stays second. And Hushoff will be third. He's got 34 points just now. So it can all change dramatically in the next sprint, which will be for the finish.
Well, they're getting to the point now where they know that the main field is whipping up. Polka dot jersey there just at the side of the road. All of these towns getting very much behind the Tour. It's a big day out for everybody, and people often say to me, why is cycling such a big thing in France? Why is the Tour de France so important? Well, it's something, I suppose you could compare it to baseball in the United States, because their grandfather takes his son to the baseball game, and here at the Tour de France, a granddad or your father has taken you to the Tour de France for years and years, and it's just really become part of family life here in France.
It has indeed, and the next target of the day, there won't be too many spectators. Well, it might be wrong, because we're going on to a bridge, and that's the only climb of the day, the Pont de Saint-Nazaire. It's been given a 4th category ranking, which means under these new rules, Paul has been telling us, it's only 1 point for the first rider and nothing for anybody else. And it's the first time I've ever seen anybody lead this competition as the only man to score, and that is Philippe Gilbert at the moment, who has just 1 point.
Well, just looking at the heart rate of Julien Alfares, the rider from Team Cofidis, over the last 10 minutes, his heart rate has been averaging 131 beats a minute, and he's been putting out 216 watts, which is not a great deal.
And he's riding at 40 kilometers an hour, or about 25 miles. It is Anthony Charteau who got himself ahead of the field. I'm quite sure he's gone in pursuit of a single point out on top of the hill. But his new sponsors, Europcar, they are based in this region. So he's also getting himself some good television time. He had such rotten luck at the start of the season. He was taking part in the new Cell C Tour of South Africa, crashed on the first day and broke his collarbone. He's just coming back now. Well, we're having a little problem with those pictures. Goodness knows why, because we have blue skies and no obstructions. But anyway, we are, and we apologise for those. All of our pictures, he's courtesy of French television. And our brilliant cameraman out on the course, might I add, because they give us some terrific images of the Tour de France. I've got a feeling he's gone ahead to meet his family there and not attack for any mountain points. We'll find out as we take another break. Well, welcome back, and we're right. He was waving at his family, and here he is. This is moments ago now. He suddenly spotted where they were positioned. There's his children rushing to say, "Hi, Dad." And he's about to say, well, this is our last greeting, and I'll see you all in 3 weeks once I finish the Tour de France in Paris. And you see, the peloton does have a heart, because they've allowed him to ride away. And I'm sorry our pictures aren't all behaving themselves just at the moment. There's the pack coming around the corner. Time to go. And Anthony Charteau back on his bike, the king of the mountains last year, and now getting back into the field. The peloton just easing off for him to join them. In fact, they lost about 5 seconds of their advantage on that leading group of 5 during that moment of waiting for Anthony Charteau. Well, that's a great tradition in the Tour de France. They wouldn't do it, of course, if the race was under high pressure, but when there's a moment, they will. These are now back with the action again. Live pictures on Versa, of course, every day for the next 3 weeks as we start the first full week of the Tour de France. It'll be a week before we see the high mountains of the Pyrenees. There'll be plenty of action before then. Well, we're looking out now at the entrance. This is the sort of, I don't know what you call it, really, the inlets of the Atlantic Ocean, really. And as we go now down to Pornic.
Yeah, Pornic is a very lovely little resort. They used to have a criterium here after the Tour de France, where a lot of the riders who participated in the Tour de France would come and ride on a circuit race. And that was, in the old days, the way that the riders made their money, because they would get appearance money to come to these exhibition races. And they were very much concentrated here in Brittany.
Yes, it's an area which is known as the Jade Coast here, and these yachts are a bit grounded at the moment. The tide will come in, and then they can go and have some fun in the Atlantic. as Pornic is really a very, very attractive port here, and it's right at the foot of its castle. And also there's a canal here as well.
Well, there's a big canal here actually linking Nantes and Brest. It's a long way up and down, and a lot of canals built in France throughout the area around about 200 years ago, and especially very much in the time of Napoleon.
And for those of you that would like to know why it's called the Jade Coast, it's because of the strong green colours of its waves, which are bordered to the north by the Loire estuary itself, as that fresh water comes out into the ocean. Well, that's the end of the history lesson of Pornic. Now let's move back to the Tour de France, and the gap is coming down. They've got back into working horses again at the front. 4:36 it is now, as we head into the last 50 miles or 80 kilometres of the day. They'll want to bring them back. Now, Paul, when will we see the catch? What do you reckon?
Well, you know, for the moment, these guys in the main field, they've got it pretty much under control there. They've pulled the gap back from 8 minutes and 10 seconds down to 4.5 minutes. They don't actually want to catch them too early, and they will probably wait until 40 kilometres to go to start whipping up the pacemaking and try and pull them back in. The ideal position is to catch them between 10 and 15 kilometres to go.
Well, at the moment, looking at our computer, it's saying the catch will happen. How many kilometres to go, did you say?
Well, I said normally between 10 and 15 would be an ideal position.
Well, the computer's predicting 24. That's 15 miles, though, so that's good.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
You didn't say miles or kilometres?
No, I said no.
Oh, you said kilometres.
Either or. Anyway, the fact of the matter is the computer works on the average speeds right now, but if the main field starts to see that the breakaway is slowing down, they'll slow down as well to try and judge that catch for themselves.
If they can just keep that breakaway on, but under control, of course, it does prohibit the opportunists attacking from the peloton and making life very hard for the sprinters' teams to chase everything that moves.
Yeah, the fact is, if you do bring a breakaway back at 30 or 40 kilometres to go, it opens up the floodgates of attacks, and that's something that the sprinters do not want. They'd rather keep it like this, keep it in a status quo, because the majority of professional bike riders know, Phil, that they cannot ride across a gap of 4.5 minutes, so they're not going to try it until the breakaway has been brought back into the fold.
HTC Columbia, or I beg your pardon, HTC High Road, as is the new sponsor's name, as they come out of Chauve, are now taking control of the front here. That's an interesting change of tactics, because they've moved Garmin-Cervelo over and decided, well, they're sharing the work with Garmin-Cervelo. The reason they're doing this, because they've got the two fast men, Tyler Farrar of the United States and Mark Cavendish from the Isle of Man. We expect them to go head-to-head at the finish today. And the score, by the way, at the moment in stage wins is 0 for Tyler Farrar and 15 for Mark Cavendish.
But my question to you, Phil, is what's going to happen on board the Garmin-Cervelo Team Express? Because you've got Thor Hushovd in the yellow jersey. Tyler Farrar is a much faster sprinter, and he's had much more success so far this season. And when asked this morning whether or not Thor Hushovd was going to work for Tyler Farrar in the sprint, he didn't say yes, but he didn't say no.
Yes, so that will also be interesting today. But Hushovd is the only Norwegian to ever have won the green jersey as well. So as the riders continue at the front, looks as though Gutierrez having a friendly chat with the car. Don't forget, make sure you are playing the IZOD Race for the Podium sweepstakes. Log on to NBCsports.com/podium every day during the tour. It's your chance to win a trip for two to the 2012 Tour de France, a Cervelo S5 bike. You can also win a clean bottle and a Giro helmet. Today's code word is sprint. You need that when you log on, by the way. It changes every day, so stay with us for the next 3 weeks. This is the entrance of the Atlantic here inland as we go round the outskirts of Pornic and enter the estuary of the Loire. The Loire, by the way, flows for just over, I think it's 700 miles across France. It's the longest river. I wrote a book about it once back in the 80s. That's how I remember it. I know it's a great freshwater fishing river halfway down once you get the salt water out the actual salinity out of the water. There we are, best seat in the house. I hope there's somebody left down below to let them down later. These are the men now. There is Thor Hushovd in yellow. He's had that jersey on his shoulders 3 times in the past, but he's never defended it to ride in it for a second day. I think today may be different because the rules again have changed over the years now. There are no time bonuses at the finish, which means that it's real time for everybody who finishes together. And as long as Hushoft is in for the sprint today, he'll keep that yellow jersey tonight. Well, this is our Lithuanian champion here. I wish he'd go off the front. I wouldn't have to say his name. Navadauskas on the front. Happy days for Anthony Charteau. Said goodbye to the wife and the kids. He's now off to Paris, but it's a bit of a way away. We'll take a break.
Critics agree.
Let's have steps on top of her.
Join the Aquaforla Tour Challenge, powered by Map My Ride and Versys, and compete against the top pros virtually, of course. Ride solo or ride as a team, you pick. Just get out and ride on any stage. Submit your ride to mapmyride.com/TDF and win leaders' jerseys, just like in the Tour de France. You can also win $150,000 in prizes. Sign up today at mapmyride.com/TDF. Well, we're looking in the peloton here now. It's almost certainly going to be a battle of the sprinters. The gap is 2.5 minutes. Look at the faces now. Chris Horner just about smiling far right of our picture as they all continue. There's Tyler Farrow with the dark glasses on. He'll be thinking of a sprint, and the man he's likely to take on today will certainly be Mark Cavendish, who we've seen do well already at the green jersey sprint point today. Mark Cavendish then, this will be his first chance at a shot of a 16th stage win. Let's have a look at Mark Cavendish. He's our IZOD athlete profile. Mark Cavendish will win this.
I want to leave a legacy on the sport.
No one in the world will beat him.
I hate losing.
There's no one can touch Mark Cavendish.
I'm in an ironic situation now. It's a complimentary one, but it's an ironic one. The fact that all I can do is fail. If I don't achieve what I have done, it's seen as a bad year.
There's nobody can match the speed of this amazing kid. Pataki is coming. It's Pataki and Mark Cavendish, and Pataki is too quick. Pataki has got it.
The headlines in the newspaper this morning were more about the defeat of Mark Cavendish than the win of Alessandro Pataki.
That's how it is now, you know. It's bigger news when I'm losing, but I went out the next day with a desire.
Mark Cavendish is going to burst for the line. The Manx missile is back. Very emotional guy. It all came out today.
I think it was all the fact that I'd just lost the day before for something that doesn't usually happen to me. Any successful person in this world, whether it's in this sport, in any other sport, or any aspect of life, they're successful because they aim for a goal. If you aim for a target, you will reach that target. If you aim to beat somebody to that target, ultimately you're going to hit a lamppost. You're not going to see where you're going. I said it, I achieved that, and I've got to set the bar higher. And I'll never look back on what I've done, you know, because then you stop moving forward. We're professional sports people. Professional sport is about promoting the sponsors that pay for your team. And you've got to advertise that sponsor as best way you can, and there's no better way in cycling crossing than you have.
Yeah, so that's what we've got to look forward to today. That's our IZOD athlete profile there on Mark Cavendish, the fastest man on two wheels. Age 26 now, Mark. He's in his 5th Tour de France as well. 15 stage wins so far. He's won 7 in the Giro d'Italia, and he's done also well in the Vuelta a España. So he's going to be sitting in that peloton, probably in the 20th or 30th positions of the front end, waiting for the finish to come into view. Oh, we've got a little bit of an attack amongst the leaders here as they've started to try and break it up. They've sensed the catch. So they've sensed the catch, Paul, and it's time to probably try and test the strength of some of these riders. 60 kilometres to go, 2 minutes 37 seconds the gap. But that's coming back together after the roundabout. They're all settling back down.
Yeah, just a little bit of turmoil, a little bit of pain in the legs there of Ruben Perez, I would have to say. And Jose Ivan Gutierrez, Phil, he didn't slow down at all as we start to make our way through this small town of Saint-Brevin-les-Pins. It's nowadays just become pretty much a seaside resort. But the development came to a halt during the Second World War, when it was pretty much destroyed by the Allied forces who were bombing this part of France, because this was the naval base or the submarine base for the Germans for the conquest of the North Atlantic.
2:39. Little flurries keeping this breakaway very, very much under control now. And they know, but they'll hang in there as long as they can as we go into inside the last 38 miles of the day, the last 60 kilometers. The next town we will see will be more or less the entry onto the Pont de Saint-Nazaire. And there it is, this beautiful bridge which goes across the mouth of the Loire and was built in 1974. It is quite a climb, you see. Levels out right in the middle there, where there'll be a banner waiting for the first man across in the Tour de France today. He gets 1 point under the new rules in the King of the Mountains. A second gets nothing.
Well, there will be a banner if it's not too windy, because in the past when
Yeah.
they've actually come over this race, they've not been able to get the banner up over the King of the Mountains point because it has been just so blustery.
Well, we'll see when we get there. We'll see if the spectators have been allowed to get up on top of that bridge as well. It's a very wide bridge, so they might well have been allowed up there in their cars. As the field here continues to reposition themselves now to perform a battle for the sprinters. Scurrying up on the outside there, he stands out a mile, and that's why he has a yellow jersey on, so he does stand out. The reason they introduced the yellow jersey was so that the public could point out the leader of the Tour de France. It's yellow because that was the colour of the pages on the sponsoring L'Auto newspaper, and so that's why we can always see where he is. Well, that's a bit of a tight one. In fact, there's a few taking the route there across the middle. Thank heavens they've made it safely. A skillful bunch of boys, aren't they? Now they're getting a bit of common sense among them, and they're coming back together. Wow, that was a tight bend. We can't call that one a roundabout, I'm afraid. It wasn't. Meanwhile, the champion of Lithuania continues to drive for Garmin-Cervelo. Well, it makes you wonder, Paul, but they all came through safely. That was a square about, I think, but they're all over it safely. Well, that's all that matters.
And another good reason, I'd have to say, Phil, to practice a little bit of cyclocross in the winter months. Now, cyclocross is a sport that a lot of these riders do during the winter months, which involves racing across fields, jumping on your bike, jumping off your bike, carrying the bike, and it does really help your bicycle maneuverability.
Ramūnas Navadauskas on the front, the champion just of last Sunday. Last Sunday now, of Lithuania, and he's making all the pacemake for Garmin-Cervelo today. I saw that they've moved up their push-off, and his team manager, Jonathan Waters, has gone on record this morning as saying that he may well sprint, even though he's up against his teammate Tyler Farrar, because he's wearing the yellow jersey and he wants to finish near the front to make sure he doesn't lose it.
Well, that's the important thing. He's on the same time as David Miller, his own teammate, and only 1 second ahead of Cadel Evans, and only 4 seconds ahead of Geraint Thomas of Great Britain, and a number of other riders. So he's got to be very attentive in the final few kilometres. But he is a sprinter. That's what he's made his reputation of being. So he won't be afraid of riding at the front end of the main field.
Here we go to the foot of the Pont de Saint-Nazaire. You see, it looks quite a hill now, doesn't it, once you get from this angle at it, and the wind will make it a contributing factor. Note the flags down there. It will be starting, it looks like they're going to start the climb with a tailwind, which means they'll hit it pretty quickly, and then they'll swing into that crosswind as they make the left sweep. Boy, it looks quite a mountain from this angle.
Well, it is pretty tough.
Only one man gets a point. It's not very fair. As we're looking at the crowds and the flags blowing across the course here, this is the start of the Pont de Saint-Nazaire now, and it's only a 4th category climb, which is the lowest nomination for a climb in the Tour de France, and which this year for the first time is giving a single point in the King of the Mountains competition only to the first man over the top. And it should be one of those 5 riders who go onto the bridge with a lead of 2 minutes and 26 seconds.
But you can see the wind is buffeting the riders from the left here, and that's why they're riding in this diagonal line. Gutierrez saying, come on, over to the left just a little bit more. He's the most experienced rider in the breakaway, number 85. He's riding this year his 8th participation in the Tour de France. But what's going to be a lot more difficult is when the main field, the remainder of the 198 riders in the Tour de France hit this bridge, because they will be battered from the left-hand side. And if somebody makes the decision to put the hammer down, we could see the main field here getting split into 2 or 3 different groups.
Well, there's no hills in the roads behind or ahead, so they've had to make this the only climb of the day. But it is a climb, there's no doubt about that. And I have to say, French designers build magnificent bridges. And there's another one not too far away, the Pont de Tonqueville, which we've also raced over in the past.
think that was a bit steeper than this one, and I'd give that one 2 points.
We'll give 2 points for that, yeah. That'll be a third category climb. There's the big liners there being repaired and rebuilt.
Those are the big,
very big boat area.
Yeah, those are the big, the Chantier de l'Atlantique, the big Atlantic shipyards, which for years and years have built some of the most majestic ocean-going liners, going back to the Ile-de-France, which was built in 1927.
Right now, it's the Tour de France climbing the Pont de Saint-Nazaire. These 5 riders are holding on just now to their 2 minutes and 26 seconds. As we start to click off the kilometres to the finish, you'd have thought they'd have turned through the inside. Oh, they heard me, they have. As they go through on the left, and the spectators suddenly get the shock as the riders come from behind.
Now you see how everybody here is being very attentive. The orange jerseys moving to the front. That's Rabobank looking after Robert Hessink. You can see Marcus Burkhardt in the yellow glasses there of Team BMC Racing. He's looking after the position of Cadel Evans, and they are hitting this bridge extremely fast.
They just picked up the tailwind there, but it is very quickly become crossed. Now, the race can split on a ride like this. It can rip straight through the peloton. We saw it, remember, the road to La Grande Motte in 2009, when Armstrong and a lot of the leaders, except Alberto Contador, got into the move that decided the day. Alberto lost a few seconds. You've got to pay attention to today. Everybody's programmed to think it's for the sprinters, but if the wind is strong up here, it could break the field.
Well, it is rather nice to see we've got the green light for the go-ahead over the top of the riders, so we're on our way through here as Jose Ivan Gutierrez is queuing himself up. They're going to wait. It's a very strange sprint, this as well. It's just over the top there once the riders get in, and I'm sure, Phil, in fact, it looks to me as if they haven't actually managed to get their banners up this afternoon.
Well, because the only man who scored in the King of the Mountains, Paul, is Philippe Gilbert. He's got 1 point. But I think because there's no countback situation, the winner of this is the most recent winner of a King of the Mountains point. I think the guy will have the polka dot jersey to wear tomorrow, and that's a big catch.
It's a big catch, and they will have worked that out. Don't you worry. These guys have got brains like computers when it comes out to working out time differences and points differences, and that's what they will know. The first man to get across the line here will have himself the King of the Mountains jersey at the end of the day. Currently, the King of the Mountains jersey is on the shoulders of Cadel Evans.
Well, here we go as they start. Delage is having a little go again on the front left, but is he going to hang on this time? Certainly Gutierrez doesn't like sprinting. He's dropped off the back, being chased by the Euskadel, but Mikel Delage had a good day out up front, and he could well be on the podium tonight if he interpreted the rules correctly as the new leader in the King of the Mountains, albeit with 1 point, the same as Philippe Gilbert.
So now it's a question of what's going on in the main field behind, because they are getting battered by the winds coming across here over the estuary of the Loire. Organisation coming back to the leading group of 5 riders. They now have to get themselves back into the situation where they get that entente cordiale. They form a group together. They work, although they're on different teams, they have to work for one main goal, and that's to stay in front of the peloton. And look at that line of riders coming out of the back.
Yes, and look at the riders at the bottom end of our picture there. The door is open, the gap is there. That's the wind going through the corridor. Those boys are in trouble just for the moment. And in fact, the leaders on that climb lost over half a minute of their advantage. It's now down to 1 minute and 44 seconds. And the peloton are riding at the front now. They're trying to break this race up and spoil the day for the sprinters. Europe Car are looking a little bit fragile right now. They've lost 3 riders here at the back. Continuing the climb too, and continuing the pressure at the front of the peloton. Now this is when the climbers really get to grips here, the strong men of the race. I noticed Rabobank. This is a perfect Dutch team action here. Good tactics for Robert Hessink.
Well, if you didn't think that was a 4th category climb, have a quick look at the damage that it's done at the back end of the field, and that really was more because of the wind than the incline of the hill.
Well, that is an absolutely amazing picture, in fact, as the riders are just being beaten marginally by that speedboat at the moment, but the riders will catch him on the way down, so you better watch out.
I don't think they will keep the pressure on here. I think they will, once they've gone over the top of this climb, we'll see it returning to normal, and all of those riders who got popped off the back for a short period of time will get themselves back into contact with the peloton.
That is a huge group at the back, Paul. You're right, they will come back, but it's indicating to us there's a lot of riders already struggling in the Tour de France, because when you see a gap like that on the only pressure point of the day, then they weren't sitting happily riding along in that peloton at all. They were in trouble. Europe car coming back with their 3 riders. They're hooking up at the tail of the peloton, and they'll be glad to be back in the comparative comfort of the main field once they can get on. It's the last few meters which is really hard to do, especially when the guy in front has just got dropped by it. Now they've got to do it all again to get round him as well. There's the little bit of chaos at the back as they scrabble to keep the main peloton in sight over the top of the bridge.
This is the moment when you're actually crossing your fingers and saying, I hope these guys in the front sit up this afternoon and they're not going to continue to put the hammer down. You can see the diagonal line across the road. That's an indicator that the wind is coming very ferociously from the left.
Yes, and now they're slightly moving round to the right, so that line will change its pattern again, and the pack at the front has come together like the concertina. There's a lot of riders setting the pace at the front. See who we can catch up. Well, Team Sky have got the men up there, and they are riding very, very quickly indeed. Don't forget, they've got Geraint Thomas, the Welshman, in the white jersey as best young rider. He would dearly love to pull on yellow.
Well, a group of riders from Team Liquigas Cannondale going off the back there. Now that's, I wonder if Ivan Basso got caught out by that. There's a big gap to these riders. We're looking at about 25 seconds. The important thing to try and note is if any of the big leaders in the overall standings got caught out in that split, because if they did get caught out, they will put the hammer down in front.
Well, I think Alessandro Patacchi might be caught at the back, the sprinter there. That'll be rid of one. And look at this. This is Sylvain Chavanel here. So what on earth happened in that catch? Now the pressure will stay on. Now the referees will not allow vehicles in between here because they want a fair play situation. Look at the crowd here.
And the sprinter number 116 there, that's Ben Swift from Team Sky. And he's got caught out because of that too. And you can see
they should get back. That little group should get back. I'm not so confident that this big group at the back will get back.
Well, I'm not sure that they will, Bill, because they're actually starting to put the hammer down at the front end. You can see they're getting themselves organised because of the fact that they may well have eliminated one or two guys like Alessandro Patacchi. They'd be very happy about that.
The cool face here, the maillot jaune, and that is Thor Hushoff, Stuart O'Grady, the Australian in the middle here. Looking at these faces, that hurt. These boys were up for the chase, but there is a serious split at the back. Let's have a look for the helicopter here now. Mark Cavendish safely in that front group. This is the champion of France who has just rejoined Sylvain Chavanel. Very surprised he was caught out, but he was caught out. Ben Swift has got back as well, so he's a very fast sprinter. He's in his first Tour de France, the British rider. Now it looks as though they're easing off the pace. Not too sure. Let's slow it down. I don't know why they want to do that. Well, they haven't really eliminated any of the likely candidates if they're going to slow it down, that's for sure. Roundabout as they continue now to snake their way through. That hurt a lot of people today, but you've got to keep alert. There's our shipbuilding yard, and there's a new ship under construction. Anyway, don't forget, traveller, you make sure you sign up for our Travelers Fantasy Cycling Challenge. You have today and tomorrow to figure out your roster, and following that the official game will start. Just log on to nbcsports.com/challenge for the chance to win a grand prize trip to next year's Tour de France. And by the way, if you win today's stage, you'll receive an Easton EC90 SL Carbon Clincher wheel set. That's rather nice, isn't it? So that's the Fantasy Challenge. Work your team out as we look at the top of the Pont de Saint-Nazaire with a new leader today in the King of the Mountains, albeit he only got 1 point, Mikel Delage. We'll see you back in just a moment. Well, tomorrow morning, the Tour de France continues on Versus live at 8 Eastern. Stage 4 will feature many opportunities for breaks and attacks, culminating with the tough uphill finish on the Mur de Bretagne. Then Wednesday, 7:30, Stage 5 takes place within Brittany, and it hugs the coastline of the Atlantic. Tune in nightly, 8 Eastern, for our prime time show on Versus. Well, the chase is just about over for these boys that got split off on the bridge, because the leaders slowed down as soon as Chavanel, and with him was Ivan Basso, who should not have been at the back either, got back into the pack. So there's no reason to leave these boys out in the cold, because they're not considered leaders and winners of the Tour de France. So as we have wisps of cloud on a beautiful day here, as we head towards Brittany now, that's where we'll be tomorrow and racing for all of the day. 47 kilometers to go, a minute 26 the gap. They've stretched it just a little bit again because the peloton did slow down, and that's why that big field has regrouped at the back, and they're just going to let those boys fry a little bit longer.
Yeah, they don't want to pull them back right now. They're still going to wait for that about 20 kilometers to go point. Then we'll start to see the trains getting themselves organized in the peloton to lead out the men who are regarded as the fast men of the world of professional cycling. Thor Hushovd, I think, has really enjoyed his day in yellow this afternoon. He's been chatting with all the guys. Funnily enough, over on the right-hand side, Jens Voigt used to be a teammate of Thor Hushovd, and I've noticed him spending a lot of time chatting with Stewie O'Grady, and those riders were all together on Crédit Agricole a number of years ago with Jonathan Vaughters.
Study an effort here. There's the Breton flag, which is flying there and indicating just how strong this wind is just now. And the boys that just came back are picking up that sort of tail to crosswind once again, and they haven't quite finished the job off yet, so it's still hurting them as they close down the gap. It looks to me as though Thor Hushovd has not been under pressure today. We've never seen him showing us the agonized look on that face of his, so he's feeling as though he's still going pretty well at the front end of the peloton. And it is Dave Zabriskie doing a lion's share of the pacemaking as well for the Garmin-Cervelo team. He's the teammate too of Thor Hushovd. Minute 24 now, the gap, 45.5 kilometers left to ride. The road, a little bit more undulations, but basically we don't really do much all the way to the finishing line today. But the finish is not totally routine. Apparently there are some rather nasty corners which in the race manual, the big Bible everybody gets, are not highlighted as well perhaps as they might be.
These riders, Phil, are going to be extremely twitchy over the next 45 kilometers because having turned away now from the Pont de Saint-Nazaire, they're going to have the wind on their left-hand shoulders all of the time now. If one of these teams decides their tactic is to try and split up the race, as they did on that road a couple of years ago into the Grand Mont in the south of France, they could split this race quite dramatically.
Vladimir Karpitz here, former winner of the Tour of Switzerland. It looks as though he's really been hit hard. Now he's not going back to the team car, he's going back because his legs just said, hey, we've had enough here. The wind did continue to rip in from the left, and I'm hearing in fact from the race that Karpitz did in fact crash, and he's crashed at the most unfortunate time. Whether he came down on that roundabout, which wasn't round at all, I'm not too sure. But these boys got back to the pack, and now they've been blown off the back again.
And this is going to be the scenario for the next few kilometers. They're on a fairly small road, the D773, which takes them right into the outskirts of Redon, and they will have this wind battering on their left-hand shoulders. Occasionally a little bit of respite when they go through some area where there's some vegetation, but when they get out into the open fields, they will be buffeted.
Well, a number of riders, in fact, out on the course have been in trouble now. Sandy Cassar has also been dropped in this group. The Française des Jeux team leader, they're getting it back together again. But the direction of the route now, the wind is going to stay pretty much cross all of the way, so they're not going to get real chance to organise themselves to get back onto the tail of this peloton. The peloton now being driven by the Leopard Trek team at the front of Andy Schleck. Now this is our final word to you, so make sure you are playing the IZOD race for the podium sweepstakes. Just log on to NBCSports.com/podium and your chance to win a trip for two to next year's Tour de France, or an S5 Cervelo bike, a clean bottle, or a Giro helmet. And today's code word is sprint. So the race has now turned it up a notch, hasn't it? We are just over 60 seconds behind those 5 riders, so they're not going to hold off much longer. The peloton is under pressure now, and they're not going to slow down until somebody wins the stage into Redon. We'll see you again in a moment.
Same plane. We'll be on the same plane.
So that is the story so far, and this is the beautiful Trek aerial view of the day here, the estuary at the Loire coming in to the Atlantic Ocean. And there's the riders and the peloton slowing down just a little bit at the moment. as Vladimir Karpits, who has changed the bike now, still trying to rejoin the race, which is being driven by a number of different teams. The Gabe leads about 1:37. Anyway, let's take the opportunity to join Liam McHugh, who's going to tell us what's on the Tour Primetime show tonight. Liam.
Phil, thanks so much. I'm next to Bob Rowland, Todd Gogolski. Guys, a very interesting intermediate sprint and a little bit of a headbutt in there. You okay with that?
Well, it was a pretty tough sprint there for the intermediate points. The Tour de France organizers announced that the sprint halfway through each stage would carry a lot more points. And we were very curious to see how that was going to play out in the Tour de France. And the riders have come out fighting for that. Each day they've had one, it's been a pretty tough battle. And Mark Cavendish getting the best of the field on the one today. The breakaway, of course, got the maximum amount of points, but the green jersey is going to be a very tough competition. These flat stages tend to get a little bit predictable. The breakaway goes, the peloton chases, then there's a big sprint. So the Tour organizers decided they wanted to spice things up a little bit, and it's worked.
And they're going to have to, the riders have to wrap their head around this new concept a little bit. The first day, Cavendish, he let out that sprint and then he pulled the plug. He didn't really have the legs to finish it off. And afterwards he said, you know, I'm not really used to this, sprinting for so many points in the middle of the race. Well, today, it looks like he figured it out a lot better.
That's the insight and analysis you can expect on Tour Primetime, 8 p.m. Eastern on Versus. Of course, we'll have full highlights, a wrap-up of the entire stage. And Phil and Paul, you'll be happy to know that your favorite part of Tour Primetime is back. It's Head Sweats Ask Bobke. All you guys have to do is go on to Versus Cycling on Facebook, and you can get your questions in, Phil. Paul?
Thank you very much, Liam. In fact, I want you all to really make Bob struggle, so make sure you ask him very difficult questions. And so we're now looking here at the return of Vladimir Karpits, not the return to the peloton. The poor man crashed, got back, got dropped, changed his bike. He's now trying to just catch anybody he can share the pace with to see if he can get back up to the leaders. And so he's got a tough chase now. This is a tough way to ride the Tour de France now. He doesn't know which car to follow, Vladimir Karpits. If the car can't get out the way, you can't accuse him of pacing, really. He's just got those few riders off the back, but he's losing ground on the peloton.
Yeah, for a moment when I saw him get back into the convoy, I thought he had a pretty good chance of getting himself back into this race. But as you can see, there's a group of riders have been dropped off the back. He'll catch them, and now he's got another hard job to try and leapfrog onto the back end of the tail of cars just in front. And there is a referee there keeping an eye on the fact that they don't want him motor pacing.
Well, he's a marked man. He's a rider who, as Paul has said, has won the best rookie, the white jersey in the Tour de France in the past. He is a man who could feature and could finish easily in the top 10 in Paris. So he has been caught out to no fault of his own. You see the way the motorcycles are carrying press photographers, television cameras, all been told by the race referee to ride to the left, not to impede or indeed hinder or even help the chase. He's being made now to do all of it by himself. But they are slowly but surely getting back to the tail of the Tour de France. This is Sandy Cassar, the double stage winner in the past. He was caught off on the bridge as well.
Well, that's a bit of a surprise. And again, it's just a question of being in the right place at the right time, which is why you have to make sure when you come to a critical point like the Pont de Saint-Nazaire, and you could see all the big leaders were riding at the front end of the pack, you've got to make sure you're in the first 15 to 20 places. And Sandy Cassar obviously was pretty much caught out.
He was, and I'm a bit surprised considering his experience, but the front end of the race really hit that climb hard. They really went for it. They clearly had a plan to test people and see how well they're coming through on this third day of the Tour de France. Team Astana has moved to the front, perhaps for Alexander Vinokourov, although he's not a very good sprinter. There he is, his third face to the left of the boys in the turquoise colour. It's been obscured now. So we are down to 67 seconds now as the riders course towards the finish. Vladimir Karpits might get back, but then again, he might not. See you in a moment.
At Mobil, we believe it's smarter to change your oil than change your car. We believe in friends that go the extra mile, engines that go the extra years. We believe your engine should last till this little one has little ones of her own. That's why we created new Mobil Super, tested and proven to help reduce wear, prevent sludge, and extend the life of your engine for the long, long run. New Mobil Super for long engine life.
At Tire Rack
Cycling Get Tour de France All Access for $29.95. Well, Vladimir Karpitz has just rejoined literally 30 seconds ago at the tail of the pack, so he's brought everybody back on. The field did slow down. The gap is hovering at just a little more than half a minute, and Team HTC High Road have moved all of their players to the front to look for Mark Cavendish. It's ominous now for anybody that can't sprint like Mark Cavendish, because they've moved all of their team up HTC High Road, and that is surely now to set up the finish for Mark Cavendish. They've waited until the catch. It's not quite there. 32 seconds. Thor Hushovd is well positioned, but his bright yellow jersey at halfway down the pack at the moment, as we look here at the 24-second gap.
Well, these riders can just look over their shoulders, and on these long straightaways they can see the mass at the front end of the peloton just waiting to pounce. But there is no chase now, Phil. These guys in the main field know it's job done. It's game over for these five.
Unfortunately, they broke away after 2 kilometers. They've got 34 kilometers to go, so they've been in the lead for 160 plus kilometers today. That's almost exactly 100 miles up front for these five riders. And again, there's no big rush to catch them. They've got them on the end of the line, but they're not going to reel them in just yet.
So coming now into the small town of Pontchâteau, and in fact Pontchâteau hosted the World Cyclocross Championships a number of years ago. The French have been very dominant in cyclocross over a number of years, but it now seems to have switched across to Belgium and Holland.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think the French did actually win a world title that year. I should remember. I was there, and I remember the fields were very muddy, so I didn't go out too often to watch it. But yeah, this is a hotbed of all sport, but cycling particularly in this region. Jens Voigt, dead centre, waving at the camera. Thank you, Jens.
Followed by Stuart O'Grady, and followed by Andy Schleck and Linus Gerdam in the reflective glasses. This moment now, Phil, is a little bit the waiting game, waiting to take over responsibility of setting the pace, setting the pace and to bring the riders down into the outskirts of the finishing town of Redon.
I was laughing there, Paul, because they were actually pointing out the breakaway, saying, well, there they are, why don't we catch them? That's what they're saying. And there's that smiling and not making the final kill. That field has got everything under control for sure. There's the peloton approaching another roundabout. It was